All right, let's get started.
Okay.
Hello. Welcome. All right, so in case you didn't know, my name is Dr. Corey Singer, Chiropractic Wellness Center. Today we're going to be talking about car accidents and what to do. Here are the goals for the talk tonight. Number one, if you're talking about car accidents, the first thing you want to do is know how to prevent car accidents, because that's the best way to stay away from it. It's better. How to prepare yourself and your car from the event of a car accident. So let's say you do get in a car accident, how to have the right stuff in your car to make sure when you have that car accident, you can handle it properly, and know what to do after the car accident for yourself and your body to take care of yourself. So those are some statistics. Who was affected? 6 million car accidents per year, which is obviously significant. It's 3 million injuries per year that are seen. So that, in other words, not everybody that gets in a car accident actually goes to a doctor and gets seen for their injuries. So 3 million of those people are actually seen. 32,000 deaths per year, that's 90 a day, which is kind of crazy. And then it's the leading cause of death from people ages 1 through 44. Which, it's kind of interesting to know that it's the leading cause of death for people from a large group of the population.
I just wonder why the cutoff's 44.
Yeah, just how they state it. So, how to prevent car accidents? That's the first thing. So the big thing is about driving defensively, right? So you don't want to. Well, let's talk a little bit about what driving defensively means. Okay. So number one, pay attention to what drivers are doing around you or may suddenly do, right? Just pay attention to your surroundings. That's obvious kind of stuff. Check your mirror. This is going to sound a lot like what you learned in driver's education, which is all good stuff, but it's a good reminder. Check your mirrors regularly. Don't assume that other drivers will move out of your way or allow you to merge. So if you're trying to go, obviously you got to make sure that you're getting into that lane before you're checking to see if other people are allowing you to merge before you actually do that. Assume that people. Here's another good one. Assume that people are going to run red lights. People are going to run stoplights, right? Mm-hmm. So why would you do that, right? So if you're at a stoplight, you want to wait like 3 seconds. So if you feel like you're guaranteed that the people that are over there aren't going to go, yeah, you want to actually kind of give them a few seconds to see if they're actually going to stop or not. Okay, yeah. So that's what if you're at an intersection or if you're at like a stoplight, very important.
That was happening to my buddy's brother.
Yeah, because that's where you see these people that will run an intersection and you get hit, and that's one of the main ways that people get in car accidents. So you want to, if you're going to be stopped at a stoplight, check around a few seconds, make sure everybody's stopped, and then you can make sure it's safe to cross. Keep a safe distance behind the car in front of you, right? So the safe rule that I learned, and it's served me pretty well, is for every 10 miles an hour that you're driving, you want to keep one car distance length, right? So if you're driving 10 miles an hour, keep a car length in front of that person. If you're on a freeway and you're traveling 60, 70 miles an hour, you want to keep 6 or 7 car lengths in front of you, right? A lot of people don't do that, right? You see people tailgating people, and the reason that that's a problem is, if somebody suddenly, or even if you take your eye off them for a second and you're traveling too closely to them, that's what you're going to get in that car accident right there. So you don't want that, right? Super simple. Follow the speed limit. Really, really simple, right? They're there for reasons, and most people, I'd say, don't exactly follow the speed limit. I'd say closely, right? But try to keep it close. Now here's an interesting one. When merging lanes, assume that the car 2 lanes over is going to merge into the same lane that you're going to, right? Just always assume that. So if you're driving, you paint a picture. If you're driving here, you're in this lane 1. Lane 2 is empty, but there's a car in lane 3 and it's parallel to where you are exactly. If you're gonna merge into that lane, assume that they're going to as well. So what you want to do is actually go up a little bit before them or below that car, and then you could make sure it's safe to merge into that lane. Or if you're going to merge into the lane, just make sure that they're not merging at the same time you are. Because I've had it where, you know, I go to merge into a lane and then that other person 2 lanes over merges into the same lane I'm going to. So you got to just pay attention to that. I don't think everybody checks for that. They're kind of really focusing on just the lane next to them when you actually have to be able to keep an eye out for 2 lanes. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I think a lot of people don't do that. That's one of the really good defensive driving tips that's served me well, at least. Pay attention to traffic in all surrounding areas and pay attention to slowing in the distance. So a lot of people, especially when they're driving, they're only kind of focused on the driver right in front of them, right? But what you want to do is have a more global kind of view. You want to be able to see not only that car, but also what's happening in front of that car, right? 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 cars or even a mile up ahead, right? Because if you see slowing up in the distance, you want to make sure that you are aware of that before, you know, you're just kind of like all of a sudden like stopping. Make sense? Yeah. So keep it right far in front of you is a really good idea, especially on a freeway or something like that. Now, when you're in a car, when you are in doubt of who has the right of way, number one, just know the right of way rules. But if you don't know exactly, just let the person that you don't know yield, right? Just yield to that person, because that's a defensive way to drive, okay? Simple stuff like using your blinkers to inform others of your moves, right? Let people know what you're doing, right? Exactly. Always adjust for rain, right? So this is super important. When it's raining or when it's snowing or whether there's stuff like that, especially in the first 30 minutes after a drive, the ground becomes particularly sleek and slippery. So you want to make sure that you're slowing down for those particular areas. Plus the water, not even just the oil, the water and the oil make it a lot less friction or less traction on the road. Easier to slide. That's called hydroplaning. Most people know about this, but a lot of people don't actually follow that rule of when especially particularly when it's raining, got to slow down, okay? Use snow chains if necessary. Obviously, if you're in a location where you need snow equipment, use them. Instances where headlights or visibility is low, right? So this is all about making sure that your car is visible to other cars. So you want to make sure you're using your headlights or whatever lights are appropriate in that situation. Okay. Now, if you're being tailgated, slow down and move lanes. Don't just get angry and slam on your brakes, because obviously they might hit you. Okay.
Brake check.
Yeah, brake check. No, just don't do that. Don't do that. So just slow down, change lanes, and you'll be all right. Now, avoid unexpected lane changes and fluctuations in speed. Don't be just super going fast and super slowing. Major lane changes or unexpected lane changes, make sure the people around you are aware of the changes that you're going to be making. Okay. Here's a simple one: don't drink and drive. Okay, so I put on here a blood alcohol percentage by body weight here, so you could take a look at this, and this is going to be on the YouTube, so it's also online. But 40% of car accidents that result in death involve intoxication, right? So that's a significant amount of them. With today, it's so easy to that there's really no excuse to be drunk driving anymore, or ever, but particularly nowadays it's super easy with DD, Uber, public transportation. Now if you do drink, okay, don't drink on an empty stomach, right? Because obviously the alcohol content will actually absorb into your blood a lot faster and it'll hit you harder. Know your limits. That's a simple one. Some people just don't really understand where their limits are as far as alcohol content. Wait an hour or 2 after drinking to actually go. So if you're gonna be drinking, make sure you're waiting at least a couple hours after you've had your last drink to start driving. And even then, know your limits and feel yourself, right? But before that, I would say just get a DD, Uber, or something like that. It's way safer. Follow the speed limit. Okay, I think I already said that. Now, I didn't mention this. 30% of car accidents that result in death involve speeding. Keep up with maintenance of the vehicle. All right, so obviously if you have a wheel or your brakes aren't working properly, then it's going to make it so you get in an accident a lot sooner than other people. Obviously the tires, make sure your tires are good, your brakes are good, your engine is good. All these things are very important.
That's the wrong form.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Huh?
That's the wrong form of brakes.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, sorry. There you go. Pick safe vehicles. Okay, this is a simple one, right? So you can go to iihs.org, and they have a ranking or categorization of safe vehicles. So
safety,
yeah. So you want to look at like the Honda Insight, Elantra, like, oh, there's all different types of cars in different categories of it. So you want to just look at that. Now, if you're drowsy, this is a very important one. Pull over and nap, okay? So a lot of accidents, right? 328,000 average annual number of drowsy driving crashes on the U.S. roadways. 109,000 average annual number of injury-related drowsy driving crashes. 64,000 fatalities with driving drowsy, okay? So this is huge, is almost as much or probably even more so than drunk driving. So it's really, really important that if you're sleepy, if you're tired, just pull over, take a nap, and get that little power nap, and then you can get up and start driving again once you're able to do so. Nobody's gonna say anything if you're parked on the side of the road, you got your hazards on or whatever, right? Keep focused. Okay, here's another one, distracted driving. This is a really big one. This falls into the category of car accidents, right? Keep focus on driving when driving. What a concept. So if you're driving, you're focusing on driving. What?
Everybody should have a stick shift.
Yes. Oh yeah. If you do have a stick shift, obviously you have to pay more attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Watch out for pedestrians. Scan the road. Use your mirrors. Store. If there's things that are going to be able to roll around in your car, store them before you start driving in a place that's not going to allow them to roll around. Now, if there is something rolling around in your car, have somebody else grab it, not you trying to like go like this and grab it while you're trying to drive at the same time. If you're going to do like GPS or music or whatever on your cell phone, make sure you do that before you start driving. There's a lot of people that like hop in their car, start driving, and then try to get their GPS going while they're driving. That's not very safe to do. Get dressed fully. This is a lot more females tend to do this, right? Don't get fully dressed before they're leaving their house. It's particularly like makeup, right? I know a lot of people that do their makeup or their hair in the car. That's very not safe to do. Don't eat foods while driving, okay? So especially messy foods, which are going to kind of get everywhere. Now, if you do, like simple things that are easy to eat, I'm okay with that. But as far as it doesn't really, it kind of hurts your chances and makes it more likely that you are going to get in an accident.
I've seen people reading books and driving.
Yeah, that's definitely, reading books is definitely not a good thing. Secure children and pets properly before driving, right? So this is simple. Have passengers help you with things needed in the car, as I mentioned. If you need to pull over at any time to do any of these things, whether it be like a text, if you're going to be texting, pull over and text if you need to do that, right? Obviously, they have hands-free headsets and things like that you can use now for cars. So it's really if you're going to need to talk to somebody, just call them up, using your Bluetooth or whatever you're using in your car.
Yeah, someone's won't even let you dial, like my truck won't let you dial if the truck's in motion.
Yeah, well, those are good safety features to have, making it so that, if they won't let you dial while you're driving. Now, how to prepare yourself and your car for an accident. Now, wear your seatbelt. Obviously, this is huge, 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 huge. It reduces death by 45%. That's huge. Just having your seatbelt on reduces your potential to die 45%. Reduces risk of being car by 30 times, obviously, right? If you're not strapped in, it's going to be a lot easier for you to fly out of the car if you suddenly hit your brakes or hit something. Reduce serious injury risks by 50%. Keep accident preparedness in your car. Okay, this one's really big. I don't know. Everybody should have an accident preparedness kit, and on your handout there, I have that, so you could actually check it off and go through it. Now let's go through what's in that accident preparedness kit. A flashlight with extra batteries, right? So you want to have batteries. Right? Obviously, if you're going to be, especially if at nighttime you get in an accident or you're just in an emergency situation, flashlight's always good to have. Reflectors, what are those? So like little kind of little triangles, things like that you could put in the back of your car, so that if you do get in a car accident, you're visible to other people, because especially if you're in the middle of the road or whatever, you want to have something that people are going to make it more visible for you to be seen. Reflectors, fire extinguisher, right? So if you do get in that car accident and there's a fire involved, you want to be able to put out your fire, right? Tanks and stuff like that can explode during car accidents. You want to make sure that you're looking out for that. Jumper cables, right? So if your car just breaks down, jumper cables or a solo battery jump starter, they make these little things where you could actually just plug it up to your car and it charges, and you just jump starts your car, right? Ponchos, so if it's raining or whatever, it's good to have it. Toe straps, okay, so if you got to get pulled over and somebody's got to get you out of there, toe straps are good to have, because not all vehicles carry them with them, so it'd be good for you to be able to provide that if you end up in that situation where you need it. This is a really cool one. It's called a Stinger USB emergency tool. So it's a glass breaker and a seatbelt cutter. That's this guy right here, okay? You can get that on Amazon. What does it do? It's especially if you're going overboard. Let's say you're in your car and you're in a car accident and your door won't open. It won't open, and let's say that there's a fire, or let's say for some reason you're over into water or something like that, and your door won't open. This is incredibly handy to have with you, okay? What you do, it acts as a car charger, so you could actually plug your USBs or stuff inside of it. But what it is, it's a simple thing, and it actually cracks the window. It's really hard to break glass in your car without something like this. So all you do is you just put it next to the glass, punch it, and it'll actually break the glass. On top of that, it's a razor, right? So you have this razor on it too. So let's say your seat belt gets stuck somehow, you could easily break the seat belt, and then you don't have to worry about trying to get it unloosened.
So
it could super save your life. Go ahead.
With that thing, you just hit it, and that core piece goes in and shoots right back.
Yeah, you just hold it and you press a little button on it. It just there's a little button, and it just sends a little shock into it, and it busts the glass and just breaks it wide open. Really cool, and they're not that expensive, like $40 to have, but literally could save your life big time in an emergency situation. Good radio to have to find out what the conditions are around in case you get stranded or something like that out in an area where you don't know what the weather is going to be like, where let's say your cell phone or whatever is not able to get reception, things like that. Flares, lights, beacons. So these are other good things, like let's say you drive over a cliff or something like that, and you need to be able to get somebody to find out where you are. Having a flare gun is a good idea to have. You can shoot it off and be able to attract attention to where you are, okay? Blanket, same thing, keep you warm, obviously antifreeze through the car, a can of motor oil. A compass, again, same situation. If you get lost in the woods or something like that, having a compass is good to have. An empty gas can. This is simple, right? Let's say you ran out of gas or whatever. Good to be able to get some gas. Quarters. Why did I put quarters there? Because just in case you need to park your car or something like that, just good to have it. That's not so much with an accident, but just a tire jack, right? In case your tire blows out or whatever, you need to lift up your vehicle. A shovel, spare tire, right? Obviously, in case same thing. Tire pressure gauge, a toolbox, just in case you need to do any kind of like repairs inside of your car. A whistle to get anybody's attention, or let's say you have a car accident where you're somewhere in the middle of a highway or something like that. You need to draw more attention to yourself. Having a whistle is a good idea to have that. Reflective mesh vest, and again, just to be able to be seen out, especially at nighttime. Work gloves and a first aid kit, right? So gauze, bandages, antiseptics, pain relievers, a tourniquet. I can't stress how important that is to have a tourniquet, because if let's say you get a major wound in like during that car accident in your arms or one of your extremities, super, or not so much the neck, but like most of the extremities, having that tourniquet will stop the bleed so that you don't bleed out and die, all right? That could easily save your life. They're like $10 to have, okay? So very simple. Camera. Okay, this is getting more into just like what you'd want to have, like in case you get in the car accident and you want to get information from other people. So a camera, a notepad, a pencil, and a pen. Now, infant car seat safety. So NHTSA, that's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. They kind of have all the rules and the regulations when it comes to like your infant car seats. Use seatcheck.org to find the right size for your child. Install as directed by the manufacturer. We'll go over some of those things. Now, infants and toddlers should ride in a rear-facing car seat as long as possible. So just keep them rear-facing for as long as you possibly can. Now, most convertible seats have limits that will allow children to ride rear-facing for 2 years or more. Once they're facing forward, use a safety seat with a harness for as long as possible until they reach the height, you know. So pretty simple stuff here. When children exceed these limits, they should use a belt positioning booster seat until the vehicle's lap and shoulder seat belt fits properly. Now, I got this stuff directly from the website about, you know, about safety for that. When children are old enough and large enough to use the vehicle seat belt alone, they should always use lap and shoulder seat belts for optimal protection. All children younger than 13 should be restrained in the rear seats of vehicle for optimal protection. Now, the rear seats is they've studied this before many times. They know that the rear seats are less likely to get injuries than the front right or the shotgun position. It's a more safe place to be in the car. For a lot of reasons, mostly for, I think it's because of like the airbag can actually be injurious to a lot of people, as well as like glass and stuff like that from like the front can actually injure those people a lot more often. So back seats are safer than the shotgun position. Once installed, call local police departments to get inspected for safety. Yeah, so in other words, this is really important, right? So you could actually go to seatcheck.org. You could find out what is your child's date of birth, how tall is he or she, how much does your child weigh, and they'll recommend what kind of seat position you'll have, rear-facing, forward-facing, booster, or just a regular seat belt. So you could actually find that out right there, seatcheck.org. You can go to nhtsa.gov, type in your area, and they'll show you exactly where you can go to inspect your car seat to make sure it's installed properly. So it's really important. All right, here. Now this is more to do with just like handling accident claims and things like that. Proper protection, right? So get medical pay on your car insurance. This is something that you can get for a very low premium. $2 to $37 a month is all this takes. But it's really, really good thing to have, right? So let's say you get in a car accident. This will cover, this policy of injuries caused by the accident usually up to $25,000. And here's the most important part. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. So it could be your fault that you got in the accident. It could be the other person's fault that you got in the accident. If you have this coverage on your thing, your car insurance will cover you, right? Most car insurers will really just cover like the accident part of it. But what about you? What about your body? This is where it's actually a really good idea to have that, especially if you're in a situation, let's say the other person doesn't have any coverage, right? So because there's people out there that are driving around, they don't have coverage on their car insurance. That it's like if let's say you get an injury, you have a whiplash injury or something like that to your neck, this is good to have, because if you don't have this, let's say that they're at fault, you're not going to be able to get any money off of them most of the times. Or if it is your fault, you'll still be covered with your car insurance. And it's a really low premium on these things. So usually about around $8 a month to have that kind of coverage. And it could save you $25,000, obviously, which is really good. What to do after a car accident? Okay, so this is the stuff that you want to do immediately following the car accident to make sure that you're protecting yourself and making sure if you're going to have to build a claim, let's say it's not your fault. If you have to build a claim against whoever you're going at, that's involved in that car accident, you want to have all this information for this, right? So if possible, so let's say it's a minor injury. Pull over, get to a safe place, like the shoulder, something like that. Use hazard lights, flares, all those things that I talked about. So put some stuff up so that people know that you're there and they're not going to run into you if they are passing by. Turn off your vehicle and park. Obviously, you don't want to keep it running. Get help. All right. So check for injuries. When in doubt, call an ambulance. Okay. Call the police. Even if the accident is a minor, you want to call the police because you want to get a police report, especially if you're trying to build a case, because you want to have that. It's very important in an accident case if you're trying to see who's at fault, things like that, right?
Sometimes it's hard to get them out there.
Sometimes it is hard to get. It's getting harder to get them out, but they will. Most of the time, they'll still come out.
I've heard people say, call back jokingly and say, what do I do with the body?
Yeah, that's bad. All right, so this is kind of information you want to actually collect. I would put all of this on your handout. Okay, collect the information. You want to get the drivers and the passengers' contact information. So if you're getting in a car accident with somebody else, get their information for contact. Vehicle model, the color, the year, the driver's license number and plate, insurance companies and policy numbers. Was driver working for an employer, right? This is important to know. If so, get the employer information. So let's say you got hit by somebody that's working for Amazon, right? You want to get their employer information. Not hard to get.
Yeah.
Well, whatever, plumber or whatever. You want to get that employer information because a lot of time that employer will actually have to cover the damages, not only for the car but for your personal medical expenses. Eyewitness name and contact information. So if anybody was around, try to get their information because it can serve you, especially when it comes down to if the person that you got in the car accident with is trying to deny that they did it or whatever, right? So having an eyewitness is really good to have. Get their information. Accident scene location and address. So wherever you are, write it down. You could also, if you have a phone, you could actually just Google map yourself and just kind of take a little picture of that. Police officer, if they came, name and badge number. Take photos of all people, okay? So the people that were there, take a picture of it, especially if if you were involved in a car accident and there were two people there, and let's say you didn't get a police report and one of the person says, oh, I wasn't there, I was never part of it. You want to have that person documented. Take photos of all damage to the car and surrounding. This is obviously take pictures of the actual damage at the scene of the accident, both not only yours but the other car and the surroundings, right? So pics of obvious skid marks, things like that, right? So if you're like, I stopped here and they crashed into me, if you see a good skid mark right there where that was your, and you could tell if it's a fresh skid mark or not, right? So if it's you can see it's a fresh skid mark. It's at this location. Take a picture of that because that could help your claim when it comes down to if there's a dispute. Okay. Do not sign anything from anyone other than the police or your insurance agent. Okay. So if somebody's like, oh, hey, can you sign this paperwork at that time? Do not do it because you don't want to kind of admit fault unexpectedly or things like that. So you want to be able to review all documentation prior to signing things like that, right? Don't need to admit fault. So even let's say it is your fault, you don't need to admit it at this point. Okay. So if the insurance asks, oh, is it your fault? You don't have to admit that. File a claim with your insurance company. If needed, allow the ambulance to take you to the hospital and assess any damages, if they need to do x-rays, surgery if needed, whatever. Let's say you get lacerations or things like that. Get checked by your chiropractor as soon as possible. This kind of goes into the medical portion of it, right? So you want to get, if you're in a car accident, you want to get x-rays. I'm going to show a little bit more about that as we go forward here. Get a physical exam. Now, maybe beneficial to get a consultation with a PI attorney. What they can do is kind of help you manage your claim if you need to have it be claimed, if it needs to be done. A lot of times they could just kind of take away a lot of the headache too. Like a PI attorney can help take away a lot of the headaches of just managing a car accident case, especially if it's messy. They will generally take a percentage of winnings from settlements, not always necessary. So this is the stuff we're going to kind of shift gears into how this can affect, getting into a car accident can actually affect your body. So let's talk about that. Damages to body. So things like subluxations, we'll go into what those are, but obviously things like muscle tears, whiplash, we're going to talk about that. Inflammation, disc herniations, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Fractures, lacerations, internal bleeding, lung collapse. Obviously these ones here, fractures, lacerations, internal bleeding, lung collapse, those are things that you won't go to your chiropractor for. Those are things that you want to go and get taken care of at a hospital, right? Damages to the mind, okay, these are brain injuries, right? So concussions, comas, PTSD, all these things can actually happen after a car accident or during a car accident. So these are actually things that chiropractic can actually very much help with. Now, I'm gonna actually, yeah, I'm gonna look at this. So pretty much what can happen in a body, there are three different types of stresses that can affect the body: physical, chemical, and emotional. We're talking obviously about a physical stress that can affect the body, right? How can that affect the actual hormones in your body? It can increase cortisol, histamines, increase heart rate, blood pressure, sugar levels, cholesterol levels, you name it, right? Decrease your immunity. Go ahead.
What's the first one that you said?
Increase cortisol.
Yeah.
So it's a stress hormone. Raises blood sugar. It's just a general stress hormone.
What about blood pressure there?
Yeah,
that one was V.
Oh, norepinephrine, dopamine, vasoconstriction.
Yeah.
Increased vasoconstriction. So vasoconstriction is where your blood vessels actually constrict, right? So it can raise blood pressure and things like that because of that area. Yeah, so the stress can have a large effect on your body as a whole, right? So this is just some of the things that can happen after a car accident, because that's a stressful event, right? Not only emotionally, like we talked about, like an emotional stress, but it's also physically, it's just a stress to your body. So a lot of times, just as a side note, a lot of people that get in car accidents generally will feel more tired after the car accidents. And why is that? Because their body is going through a healing process and it's energy expensive. Now, physical stresses, what happens during a car accident? This is whiplash. We're going to talk about it, right? So here's a bone, right? Two bones and a normal disc, and then nerves that are unimpinged. During a car accident, these bones can actually get misaligned and put pressure on nerves, right? So that's called a subluxation, okay? Subluxation means less than a dislocation, or pretty much a bone that's out of alignment putting pressure on nerves. Subluxation. Obviously happened during a car accident. So if you look at this, right, you have a normal, let's say this is a normally aligned spine with a C shape in the curvature in the neck. This is somebody that's turned around looking like this, obviously. After a car accident, you can get a misaligned spine with an S shape, right? So if you just follow the line here, looks like more like an S. How does that happen? You can get tears in actual ligaments in the posterior aspect of these bones, and actually can allow these bones to shift out of their normal and proper alignment. When that happens, you get pressure on the nerves in those areas, and can lead towards degenerative processes, which we'll talk about in just a second. But here's what I want to point out. There's a lot of people that get in whiplash type of traumas. Let's say that they have pain, and let's say that they went to a chiropractor, right? Let's say that they had pain and they went to a chiropractor. If the chiropractor is not actually assessing the spine and taking pre and post x-rays of their spine, especially particularly the neck in that instance, they could start to feel better, but if they didn't fully correct the spinal curvature, that person is going to be walking around with this problem later on in their life, and they didn't know about it, right? So it's super, super important. Anybody that gets in a type of car accident, you get your spine checked post accident, because you want to make sure that you are aligned, you get your spine aligned after your car accident, right? Let's say that they obviously didn't go to a chiropractor, obviously their spine, they have no clue what's going on. You get your spine checked after a car accident. Just wanted to point that out. Now, if it's aligned for a long period of time, let's say you have a whiplash trauma and it turns into this, over time that misalignment here will start to put pressure on the discs can start to wear down, and eventually they can fuse up, okay? Now that's obviously problematic, because that person's nervous system is just not working at its optimal level. Also, on top of that, you have loss of range of motion, things like that inside of the neck. Usually, it could be pretty painful, but not necessarily. There's people that are walking around with degenerative processes in their neck that have no idea, or just any kind of area in the body that have no idea that degenerative process is even going on. You know, it's crazy, right? Now, thoughts. During a car accident, obviously it creates a high emotional stress. We talked about this. Now, handling the claims, injuries, it's obviously just taxing on the mind, and it could affect it. Now, the traditional medical approach, you have drugs and surgery, right? Now, best in the world when it comes to emergency traumas and life-saving. So let's say somebody's gotten a laceration or something like that, or a fracture or whatever. America, best place in the world to get in a car accident, because we do a pretty darn good job of fixing that kind of stuff up. We do. Physical therapy is really good for muscular conditions, but it fails short, it falls short for misalignments, right? So if there's things like subluxations or things like that, they don't do as good a job at that kind of stuff, right? If not at all, because they're just not trained in it as much as chiropractors are. Now for things like subluxations, whiplash traumas provides only temporary pain relief and does not address the condition itself or the symptoms. In other words, when you get in like a car accident, if you go to physical therapy or things like that, it's good for muscles, but not necessarily good to realign the spine. Make sense? Now, here are some simple solutions. Adjustments, spinal reconstruction, that's what we focus on in our office. Breathing techniques, stress reduction techniques, we're gonna go over some of those. Physical therapy, obviously good for muscles and rebuilding strength in certain limbs that need it. Acupuncture, we'll talk a little bit about that. The rest ice compression elevation for tears, really, really good. So I'll talk about that later. Dietary supplement essential oils, we'll also talk about that. Oxygen chambers, laser therapy for brain. Now I'm not gonna talk too much about this, but laser therapy has actually been proven very effective for people with brain injuries to help rebuild and re-stimulate the brain. EMDR. So this is, I'm gonna go into this and what that is and why it's really good for PTSD. So we'll talk about that later. Some examples of the reconstruction that can happen pre and post chiropractic, given the proper adjustments, right? Somebody that has a misaligned curve in their neck before and after chiropractic care. People that have loss of curvatures in their lower back, right, can actually rebuild those curves. People with scoliosis can help to rebuild those, help get the spine aligned properly. And obviously the same thing, I'm just showing you those kinds of things. This is just a study of chiropractic care for whiplash injuries, right? Pretty much what they did is they took 28 patients that had tried pretty much other stuff and were unresponsive to like physical therapy, other kind of conventional treatments, put them through chiropractic care, and 93% of the patients improved following the chiropractic treatment, which pretty much just says like, look, chiropractic can be very helpful for whiplash injuries. This is obvious kind of stuff, and most people will know this, but this is just, I wanted to throw up a study to prove it. Here, some type of stuff that people can do post-accident. So I was talking a little bit earlier about herniated discs can actually happen during car accidents, right? Where we get more pressure on the disc space. This is called spinal decompression. What we can do is we actually open up those disc spaces, allowing a negative pressure into the disc and allows those discs to be rebuilt and allows the disc material protruding out into the nerve space, which would be over here, goes back to where it's supposed to be. So in other words, it creates a vacuum inside of the disc space, draws whatever needs to be drawn back into the disc space, so that's a lot more healthy.
Is that what happens when you kind of open up the spine?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. To help to rebuild curvatures, things like denerolls. These are somebody that has a loss of curve in their lower back, helping to rebuild it. Same thing with this is another type of traction device, which is called a posture pump, which you could place underneath both the cervical and the lumbar curves to help to rebuild the curvatures and rehydrate the disc spaces. Really good stuff for that chiropractic does. These are just posture exercises for somebody that has a whiplash type trauma. Right? So neck extension exercises is where you take a towel or something like this, put it behind your neck, literally just look up like this. It'll actually start to rebuild the curvature into the neck. This is somebody that has a forward head posture. So literally taking your neck and doing these extension exercises. You could also find a wall and push your head into the wall, and helps to rebuild the curvature in your neck as well. T's, Y's, M's. These are also really good just for general posture. So taking your hands, bringing it back like this, holding it for 20 to 30 seconds, that's the T. Then you got the Y up like this, and then the M like this. All the while, you want to be focusing on your neck retraction. These are all really good exercises to do on a daily basis to help to rebuild and just strengthen your general posture. This, I was talking about RICE, so rest, ice, compression, and elevation. So these are really good for any kind of like muscle trauma or things like that, where there's pain after a trauma, obviously like whiplash. So number one, rest it. Stop using the injured body part. if it's obviously too much. Now, there's limits to this because you don't want to completely rest an area because you can risk that area not functioning and moving the way that should be long term. So I'd say use common sense with this. You want to rest it, but you don't want to be like not use it at all, right? Unless it's like a fracture or something like that, which this is not applying towards.
Yeah.
Ice. I don't know what that is for. Hopefully it's still recording. Okay, we'll keep going. Ice. Ice is also very good because, you know, put ice packs, things like that on it. Now, what you want to do for this is at 20 minutes at a time, do not apply ice directly to a skin. So you want to use something, some type of barrier between. It's like a towel or something like that, or, you know, paper towels, things like that. Compression. Why is compression good? It actually will draw blood out of that area because, like, a lot of times if you get an injury or laceration, it will swell. So the compression will actually help with that. Elevation. Same kind of thing. Let's say it's your leg that's swelling up. Lifting it up over the area of your heart will actually draw the blood out of that area to kind of minimize a lot of the pain, which is really good. Meditation, particularly really good if you have if you're particularly stressed out after a car accident, right? So this is training the mind in order to receive benefit. There's plenty of good apps out there for meditation, you know, on your cell phone and things like that. Simple things just as much as breathing, right? Diaphragmatic breathing, where you're actually just breathing in through the stomach, holding it for, you know, 10 to 32 seconds, and then exhaling for 16 seconds. And you repeat that up to 30 minutes. This has tremendous effects on not only your mental state of mind or just kind of, you know, keeping you stress-free, but also good for blood pressure issues, good for just a lot of other conditions as well. Really good to do. And it's a form of meditation. Acupuncture, this is just they did a systemic review. I got this. This is from Evidence-Based Complementary Alternative Medicine, 2017. So what they did is it's called a meta-analysis. They took a bunch of different acupuncture trials where they actually give somebody acupuncture and then they compare it to sham acupuncture where they're not actually doing acupuncture where it looks like it, or they're comparing it with people that are actually getting injections or needles that are like analgesics. And a lot of times what we're finding is that the acupuncture is better than those analgesics for pain relief and pain management, which is it kind of boggles my mind a little bit, but that's what the literature says here. Here, kind of foods to be eating, right? So half your body weight in ounces of water. Really, really important to keep up with the water, particularly after an injury, because you want to make sure that your body is being rehydrated properly, you're reducing your swelling, things like that. It's going to help you out. Mediterranean diet. This is just a general type of diet. Ketogenic diet, anti-inflammatory diets. These are things I'm not going to get into all about that, but pretty much what you were looking for is lots of vegetables, some fruits. Meat consumption is fine, but I would keep it to a minimal, like maybe like 4 ounces a meal, something like that. Apple cider vinegar also helps just kind of alkalinizing the blood, helps the microbiome. Juicing, all these things are also very fantastic to do. These are good supplements to do, particularly after a car accident, but just in general. Vitamin A, vitamin D, right? To help to rebuild the lost cells or the damaged cells. Vitamin C, copper, these are all a lot of anti-inflammatories, particularly vitamin C. Turmeric, garlic, all very good for anti-inflammatories. These are good for pain management. So turmeric's really good for anti-inflammatory. Copaiba helps your endocannabinoid system.
Bless you.
Copaiba is actually an essential oil, okay? So really good for the endocannabinoid system, which is your body's internal, one of its ways that you have cell-to-cell communication. It's really good for it. Deep Blue, this is by doTERRA. Deep Blue is actually really good for just like, it's a pain management type of thing. Birch, lemon, lime, peppermint, wintergreen, those are also very cooling, good for pain management. You could also, and you could just mix those into a coconut oil carrier and massage it onto your palm or anywhere the pain is bothering you, okay? Hyperbaric oxygen, this is for more for kind of brain injuries. They found that this is just another, I think this was another meta-analysis where they were just comparing people that were getting hyperbaric oxygen therapy and seeing how they did overall. But pretty much they were showing lots of improvement. Let me see exactly what the number on this was. Glasgow, oh yeah, so Glasgow Coma Scale was the primary outcome, while Glasgow, pretty much they were showing that it was very helpful. I'm not going to read all this, but they were showing that this was very helpful. Okay, and this was Neurologic Sciences, May 2016. Okay, this is EMDR for PTSD. This is the last slide I have for you. So PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder. So after a car accident, a lot of people can have fear of going back into cars, or just in general, like a sound that's made can actually kind of reproduce those kind of pain, those kind of symptoms of just kind of fear inside of their body. So yeah, so it happens to a lot of people, and people can have body memories and all kinds of interesting stuff after car accidents.
My old customers at my old shop, he thinks him and his son were in a truck, and they're out on the road by themselves and flipped him down every time if he hits
yeah,
tries that and the sun's with him, it freaks him out.
Yeah, so a lot of people get these kind of things where they get, after a car accident, they remember those experiences. Those experiences trigger something in their mind where they get afraid or whatever. This is called EMDR. Eye movement, I think dissociative reconditioning. I don't know exactly what, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but pretty much it is a type of movement where you actually can look at lights. They use light and sound, I believe, to, and I'm not a expert on this, obviously, but I know that I've looked into this and I've known that this has been very helpful for people, so I wanted to add it as part of this talk tonight. PTSD following a car accident. So what you do is you actually look at these lights. What you do is you think about the experience. This is after the car accident. So you think about the experience, and usually it'll kind of create a sensitivity scale or fear, and they'll gauge it 1 to 10, and then you'll look at these lights, thinking about those experiences. And what happens is, because you're bringing it out of what's called the subconscious mind, and you're using your different part, you're taking those thoughts and ideas and memories and giving your brain an ability to reprocess that information. So it's no longer a subconscious trigger for you. Because a lot of times when people get those triggers, they're subconscious. But when they do these, it'll actually, and this is kind of some of the evidence of showing that what they do is it actually puts it into a different part of their brain, gives the brain the ability to reprocess that information consciously, so it doesn't trigger the same response afterwards. So usually they can look back at that experience, and after they've done a few sessions of this, that experience that was triggering them at a 10, maybe it's at a 1, and you just kind of work it out until it goes away, which is kind of cool. So I wanted to put that as for anybody that's been dealing with that kind of stuff, because it's very, very common. That is all for tonight. So we do offer a free initial consultation for anybody that wants to come in here and come into the office, talk to us about a car accident or things like that. So we're more than welcome to assist. Okay. Any questions?
No. Very good.
All right, cool.